Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Paper Crafting Thursday. I'm Leslie Watkins. So yesterday during Watercolor Wednesday, I took some new brushes and some new colors for a little test run, and I created this sort of experimental piece, and it's just a sort of a decorative wet and wet floral motif. And what I did off camera was I went around three of the edges and I put a little bit of my gold Delicata ink. So I used this, and I'm going to go ahead and just finish the fourth edge here. Okay, so now I've got a little bit of a golden glimmer, and I'm not sure how well the camera will pick that up. It's fairly subtle, but I want a little more bling. So before I get started with that, I want to tell you what I have in mind. So I'm just making sure that I'm broadcasting, and that looks fine. It's fairly subtle, but I have. Okay. Now I want to go here. Whoops. There I am. All right. So this is on 140-pound watercolor paper, and I would like to make a little watercolor journal. So I'm thinking something that I could take with me on my camping trips, that I could keep in the car and do some plein air studies. So for instance, I have my watercolor journal that you see me working in on Watercolor Wednesday, and this is kind of like a deluxe edition. All right, so here are all the paintings on the inside, and I've got a pocket for brushes, and the cover was done on a scrap of watercolor paper, something that I painted online. And then what I did was I went around, and I think you can see that there's a little bit of gold zigzagging stitching around the edge. Also, this section here is heat embossed, and I'm going to do some heat embossing on my new little one so that it's similar to this. Now this book has two signatures in it. You can see the binding here. Okay, looks like that. I'm not going to put two signatures in this little book. This is going to be more of like a little pamphlet book. So that's the plan, is to make a mini version of this, and I'm going to walk you through all of the steps. I'm not going to talk about measurements and supplies just right now, because if you're interested in getting all that, there will be a journal making workshop coming right up. And if you'd like to hear more about that, subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, and I will be listing all the information there about how you can find out about the materials, the measurements, and blow-by-blow instructions. So please make sure that you're subscribed to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, and you can do that on my website, which is dandelioncottagedesign.com. All right, so let's turn you down. I'm going to get busy and show you how to go ahead and take it to the next step. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to do a little bit of heat embossing. And I'm going to be using some stamp sets to do that. I'm going to be using the Pretty Florals, which looks like this, and the Delightful Wishes that looks like this. And I'm going to be using this stamp here, and I'm also going to be using this stamp here. So I'm going to get those mounted up. And I'm going to need a bigger block, I think, for this one. Now, if you're tuning in, I'd like to know where you're tuning in from and what you have planned for the 4th of July weekend. So today is July 3rd, and here in New England we're supposed to be having some very nice weather. So I'm hoping that we have some outdoor time. I've been working on the vintage trailer I have up in the back, getting it ready so that we can have some fun there. And I'm going to be doing some work on Belle. We call the vintage trailer Belle. Her full name is Flora Belle. And she needs a little TLC. All right, so I'm looking, the effect I want is a kind of a shimmering background effect. I'm going to use my little embossing buddy, and I'm just going to gently tap around. This is going to add a little bit of, I think it's chalk that's in there, and that's going to help to absorb any oil or grease that could make the embossing powder stick to it where I don't want it to be. And now I'm using my Versamark ink, and this is a clear ink that works as a kind of a sticky glue so that the powder will adhere. And I'm going to run that through here, right in the middle. Okay, and then I'm going to take this one, and that's the one that looks like this, and I'm going to use that in the centers of these two larger flowers. All right, so let's see what this looks like. I have a little bit of the gold embossing powder in my bin here. It's almost time to replenish it. I keep saying that, but it keeps lasting longer and longer. Okay, that looks like it's going to be really pretty. Just want to make sure I've got plenty on there. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my heat tool and get that powder melted. So I'm just going to, I'm going to turn off the volume for a minute so you don't have to. Okay, so I like that a lot, but I think I want to add a little bit more. So I'm going to use the same stamp here and here. I see Beverly. Hi, Beverly. Hey, Ginger. So glad you could make it. All right, and then I'm just going to turn this around the other way. Giving that a good press. I think I might actually use up all my powder this time. Pretty good. Okay, let's see how that does. It's going to brush away some of these ones that got away. All right, I'm going to mute you again. Okay, so that's looking kind of nice. I have some ribbon that I'm going to be using, and this is the brand new ribbon that I am really in love with. It's called the Mossy Meadow and Gold Trim, and it looks like this. So it's kind of interesting. It's got two sides. So one side is sort of a sparkly greener side, and the other side is a much more glittery gold side. And I'm actually going to use the green side out to wrap my closure with. So it's going to look something like that. Alright, now I just have to move some of the things off my desk here because we're going to get very busy in a minute. I have a lot of things to show you today. So, this is the Moody Mauve in color from, I think it was 24-25. And I'm going to go ahead and use this as the inner cover or inner layer. So the artwork is going to wrap around something like this. So there's going to be a little bit of a border of the Moody Mauve. And then, of course, I have this beautiful trim. I also have some designer series papers that coordinate. And I have this little butterfly. Now this is a butterfly that I painted a long time ago for a workshop that I was having. And at the time, I made a lot of flyers and I had some left over. Okay, so what I did was I fussy cut the butterfly from the flyer. And then what I did was I went around the edges and I inked the edges to get rid of that any white border that was showing. And what I want to do with this butterfly is I want to glue it down on top of my cover. However, where's my ribbon? Here it is. However, I don't want the ribbon to cover up the butterfly. Okay, so if the ribbon is in the center here, something like this, I want my butterfly to be flying up. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit so you can see better. I want the butterfly to be flying up from the bottom, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that glued on there. And if I can find my glue. Uh-oh, this one doesn't feel like there's very much glue in there. Hold on, I think I've grabbed the wrong one. This one feels a little more. There we go. I'm going to put plenty of glue on here. I don't want this thing to be peeling up because the outer cover, of course, is going to get a lot more wear and tear on it. So I want to make sure that the butterfly stays right where I want it without having any torn edges. Okay, so that's going to go something like that. And I don't want to cover up my gold either. I guess I'm going to have to cover up a little bit. All right. There he is. Give that a burnish. Now when I fussy cut the butterfly out, I cut off its antennas. But I have this really nice fine point pen that my friend Mary gave me, Mary Z. If you're out there, thank you, Mary. And it's called an Arteza pen, and I'm going to use that. And excuse me if I get my head in the camera here because I got to get close. And I'm just going to go ahead and put those antennae back on. Alright, so there, give you a good close. There they are. Whoops, he's flying away. Alright, so there are the antennae put back on. And the next thing I want to do is I want to adhere my ribbon closure. Now I debated back and forth if I wanted to put this under like that, but I decided it was much too pretty to hide. And so I'm going to grab my double-sided tear and tape, and I'm just going to run that right across. Oh, actually, before I do that, hold on, I'm glad I caught myself. I want to do one more thing. Actually, no, I don't. I want to put the tear and tape on first. So I'm just going to run that across the middle. And just remove a little bit off of the end here. All right, but I'm not going to pull off the backing just yet because I want to create a surface that's a little more durable than just the watercolor. So for that, I've grabbed some micro glaze. There are several different products that are kind of a waxy product that'll do the same thing. And they're very nice for protecting watercolors that are not under glass. So I'm just going to grab my paper towel and I'm going to put some protection under here so I don't get this all over my surface. And I'm just going to gently go around in little circles over the entire thing. And so the reason I didn't want to pull the backing off of the double-sided tape was I didn't want this wax to interfere with the adhesion of that tape. So when I pull that backing away, it'll expose that glue and I'll be able to stick my ribbon to it. And this waxy finish also feels really nice. Now I'm putting quite a bit on there. I'm going to buff a lot of that off before I go any further. But I want to make sure I get it completely covered. Be gentle around my butterfly. Okay. Right now I'm just going to gently buff the whole thing. being careful to get the edges. Okay. Now, I'm going to wipe my fingers. I'm using a clean paper towel now, and I'm just going to give it another quick buff, and this is going to remove any of the excess. I also put a score line in the middle. And that does two things. It's gonna help me to fold it exactly where I want to fold it. So I'm just going to gently get that started. Okay. And it's also going to help me to know where to place my ribbon. So I've already folded my ribbon in half. I know where the center is, so I can match that up. Like so. All right, so there is how that ribbon looks. I think you can see a little bit of the sheen on here. It has a really beautiful, soft texture. I'm going to gently, just gently burnish that. I'm not pressing all the way. I just want to sort of tease it into shape, like so. Okay, now today I'm going to show you how I construct the rest of the journal, but I'm not actually going to glue this down today. Or I am going to glue it down today, but I'm not going to do it on camera because I want to zigzag around the edges on my machine, and I don't want to leave you hanging while I'm off camera doing that. So I'll do that off camera, and then at the end I will show you the thumbnail with the actual art glued down onto the cover. So now let's go to the next layer, which is, I just want to make sure I don't have any wax left on my fingers. Give that a good rub. I've gone ahead and I've already folded my watercolor paper. So this is the 90-pound hot press paper, which I like to use in my journals. And I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folios, which means that I've got a total of 20 pages, which is a nice amount for a journal of this size. It's not so thick that I can't bind them into one signature, but if it was any more pages, it probably would be a bit much. Now sometimes when making a book, I might trim the edge so that all the pages are equal, but in this case I like that they're uneven, and I don't mind that, so I'm going to leave that just the way it is. I have a couple of pieces of the linen paper. So this is a Stampin' Up! Retired product, but if you have any of this linen paper left around, this stuff is awesome for reinforcing books. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this started. I'm going to peel off the backing. This is actually a linen cloth that has adhesive on the back. okay? And it works just like the book tape that you would use if you were restoring a book. And what I've done is I've cut this slightly smaller than the height of the spine, so it's about a ½ inch shorter. And I'm going to just get this placed in the center, and I can see my score line pretty well. So get that adhered, and then I'm going to just bring this down and line that up with that score that I have on there. All right, so give that a good burnish. And that's just going to give me some extra reinforcement for where I will be stitching in my signature. I have another piece for the next layer, which I'm going to show you now. For this, I've got a piece of 12 by 12 Moody Mauve, and I'm going to score this to make a folio. And before I do that, I just want to double check my measurement so I get the right height. Okay, and so this is 8.5. So I'm going to go ahead and score that. And then I'm going to also score it in half at 6. Okay, so that's going to be the inside cover. I need to remove this little section here. So for that, I'm going to get out my giant scissors. And I'm going to slightly angle this by about, I don't know, say 1/8 of an inch outside of the score line and bring it right up to that point where the two scores intersect. Okay, so I'm just removing this little bit, and that's going to be the inside with 2 pockets. All right, now this hidden part that is on the outside of this layer, I'm going to reinforce with the linen paper as well. So I'm just peeling off that backing. If you don't have any of this linen paper, then there is something called book tape that you can get that is sold to librarians and book restorers, and that will also be a good reinforcement. It's a little thicker, so you may not need to have 2 layers like I'm doing here. I'm just going to gently ease that into place, like so. Okay, now I want to decorate the inside here. So for that, I have this beautiful paper. See if I can find my pattern here. Let's see. See if I can figure it out. Huh. Well, I don't know how they match up. I thought I had cut this so that everything would come together. Oh well, I'm not sure, but it's close enough. I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. Uh-oh, grabbed the wrong glue again. Aside from the decorative value of lining the inside cover with the DSP, I also like to do it because it adds another layer to make the cover that much stronger. So one of the really nice things about using these watercolors to decorate other projects, whether it's a journal cover as I'm doing here today, or if it's a note card, a bookmark, a box, whatever the case may be, it's a great way to use these paintings that you may not want to hang on the wall, but if you add some other things like the ribbon, the heat embossing, embellishments, whatever the case may be, you can turn it into something very charming. All right, so there's my inside, and then for the pockets, I'm going to use the other side of the paper. So something like this. And got some glue. One more glue over here. Let that dry, and I'll pick that up with my glue eraser later. Now, if you wanted to use your journal for a kind of a scrapbook or a photo album, then instead of using the watercolor paper, you could use some of the thinner basic white cardstock or something like that, something that's not quite as thick as the thick. Okay, so there's my decorative interior. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to adhere the outer edges. So just along here, I'm gonna leave the inside edge open so that it's easy to slip things in and out. And of course, this would make a beautiful little folio to tuck papers in. You could decorate the cover if you just wanted to have the one layer. All right, so now this will come together like this. There's going to be a border, so you can see that border around the edge, and that border, that extra little bit of card, is going to protect the papers. Okay, so that they're situated well inside there, and they're not going to get rubbed around the edges. So that's going to go like that. Now, I am not going to glue this on right now. I will do that later, but what I am going to do is I am going to go ahead and stitch in my signature. So for that, I need my piercing pad, I need my paper piercer, and I'm just going to, I've already created this template, and it has 5 marks on it. This is for a 5-hole pamphlet stitch, and it's just the size of the cover, so I can clip that into place. Make sure that the fold is right where I want it, tucked well inside there. And then I'm just going to go ahead, double check. And I'm going to go ahead and pierce just like so. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing. This time with my signature. But since the signature is a little bit shorter, what I've done is I've put some pencil lines to help me get that centered in there, so I can kind of eyeball that. And add my clips. Okay, double check. Make sure that everything is nesting tight. Just going to press that as far in there as I can get it. Okay, and then the exact same holes. You can also mark these top to make sure that you have everything going in the right direction, but I know that I did a pretty good job of measuring here, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, we're in the home stretch here. I'm going to take my linen thread and starting in the center, I'm going to go through and I'm going to leave a little tail, okay, so I can just hold that with my thumb, and then I can go back through this hole pull that taut the end. I'll make sure I leave a length of that. And then I'm going to go back through the second from the end. And I want to be careful that I'm not piercing the thread. And that looks okay. Then I'm going to go all the way past the center to this other one. Through the end. Make sure that's fairly taut. You don't want to pull it so tight that you tear the paper, but give it a good tug. Back through that second one, and then up through the center. Find my spot. Where is my spot? All right, I'm going to pull that through and then go in. Here we go. All right, and then what I want to do is I want to straddle that center thread. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. Let me just get that pulled through. Okay. So what's happening here is I have this center longer stitch in the middle. And I give that a gentle tug. Make sure that all my stitches are nice and straight. There's no loops. That looks pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a double knot around that longer stitch in the center, just like so, and then give these a little snip. Okay, so there's my signature. All right. I've got my nice pockets here to slip things into. Got my beautiful watercolor paper. I've got my reinforced spine. And so all that's left to be done is to glue down my cover, which I will do after I do the machine stitching around the edge. So let me just get this tied together so you can see how it looks. So there it is. There's my new little plein air, maybe, if that's what I decide to use it for. But what's nice about this is that it's small enough that it will fit inside my my little backpack watercolor kit, and I can just slip that in there. The other thing I can do is I can take a large Ziploc freezer bag, and I can put that inside of the freezer bag, so if it starts to rain, I don't have to worry about my paper getting wet. It'll just add another layer of protection. But the surface feels really nice. I love my little butterfly on there, my upcycled butterfly from my flyer. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I hope that gives you some ideas on how you could make your own little journal. This is a very simple journal. I didn't create an added spine. It's just a fold. Really, it's a portfolio is what you would call it. So I hope you like that. I hope that gives you some ideas of what you can do with your watercolor paintings that may not be frame worthy, but the paper is still very good, and you've got some beautiful color on there, maybe a little design, and just jazz it up and turn it into something really special. So thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next week for Watercolor Wednesday, and until then, stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and have a wonderful holiday weekend.